Hello, everybody. How we doing? I don't know if I should start out with karaoke or if I should jump right into the slides. I mean, that's what it feels like, to be honest with you. Now, this trip started out in Denver. I flew up to Denver, and my friend over there, Sergeant Thomas Sonny Morgan, would you raise your hand? And I began our trek this way, but we had some time to kill. And whenever there's time to kill, you never want to just waste it. You want to sharpen your skills, do something better. And let me tell you, your neighbors to the west, you think you've got issues here, you should go to Colorado. Now, in fact, I call it Cali-Grado, and for obvious reasons. But in Denver, I had a few hours to kill, and I found a precinct in Denver that went 100% for Joe Biden. And it wasn't like 4 votes. It was 376 Biden votes and 0 Trump votes. 376 to 0. And I decided I'd go in there and put my numbers up against the best of the best, the toughest of the tough. Because that's the point of all this, is to give you information that you can work with. And I figured that would be a tough audience. So I found the precinct, and I went to an area of this precinct. I sat down, pulled open my computer, and started going through all their counties. 60 plus counties, registration data, 16-year cycles, and not one person could butt back against anything I had to say. Nobody wanted a piece of me, probably because of the vest, would be my guess. And after about 30 minutes, really it became boring showing all the issues in Colorado's elections. Remember, Jenna Griswold said there's going to be no audits here. And I got bored, and I stood up, and I left that cemetery. Now, you have plenty of cemeteries that we're going to talk about here in Nebraska. Now, before we start, though, I want to tell you, when you live in a state in the heartland that is as conservative as Nebraska is, it's very easy to become complacent. Complacency is the enemy of liberty. So if you want to know why I run all over the country, it's because I'm tired of seeing people be complacent and comfortable and forfeit the future just because they're comfortable today. There's a lot of people who don't do that. So everybody here who's going to watch the presentation tonight, clearly you fall into a group of people who cares about the future. And you should, because you're not going to turn this state over 90 counties. You're not going to turn the state overnight. But you can surely corrupt all the major population centers in the state, and that's what's already happening. Because tonight I'm going to show you 3 of your major counties, and I think you're going to be pretty upset. But there are people that take action. So history remembers the people that decide to take action and do something about the problems of the day, regardless of the risk to your reputation. So where is Bob? Come on up here, Bob. So when I first met Bob, he was breathing fire about running for Secretary of State here in Nebraska. The layperson, your uncle at the Thanksgiving table, is like, well, what's the problem with our elections here in Nebraska? Trump won the state by 19 points. We don't have any issues in Nebraska, right? You hear it all the time. I heard it from several of you before we even got up here. I remember talking to you. There's no issues here in Nebraska. I always like to say, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? Because we've let the country as a whole get into a position by being passive. The position where it's in has been earned over decades. So how many veterans are in the house? Veterans? Stand up. All right, so the veterans in the house. You probably know what this is in my hand, right? Anybody? This is my challenge coin. So normally a challenge coin is given for exemplary accomplishment, exceeding unit standards, doing something meritorious or valorous. Challenge coins usually have a unit's insignia and mottos on them. Normally you don't see individuals with their own coins. You might see generals that have them, but I decided to get some Captain K coins minted last fall to recognize people who are going above and beyond the call of action. Now, my coin, when you look at the back, I have two mottos. It says, if not you, then who? And if not now, when? And on the other side, it says Proverbs 21:31, which says, man prepares the horse for the day of battle, but victory rests with the Lord. So those of you of faith understand that we are not able to reverse the damage to the country without the help of God. But we have people who are standing in the gap that regardless of what they say about you in the paper, right? Remember the nasty stuff they say, conspiracy theorists and whatnot, that are willing to stand up, stick their neck out there and make a difference. So with that said, I want everybody to know that Bob is one of these people who makes a difference where he's at with what he has going for him, and I want to honor him with my coin. So with that said, this presentation is called Behind the Election Corruption Curtain. It used to be called Behind the Election Integrity Curtain, and I changed it a few months ago. Anybody want to take a guess why? Because Republicans in name only began to use the term election integrity as a fundraising tool to be able to get you to run out and put yard signs out, knock on doors, and give them money to do absolutely nothing with a toothless agenda. So now it's called Behind the Election Corruption Curtain, and I think you're going to see very quickly here in the next 20 minutes, if you're on the fence, that there are some serious issues here in Nebraska, just like there are in Kansas, just like there are in South Dakota, just like there are in pretty much everywhere around you. So before we start, are there any skeptics? Does anybody think that Nebraska had a clean election in 2020? Oh, one person back there, that's fine. I actually invite skeptics because we have to be able to convince people of our ideas or they have no merit. So good, we have one skeptic in the house. I'm glad he's here. We're going to talk about Sarpy, Douglas, and Lancaster counties tonight. We're going to talk about the statewide numbers. And we're going to talk about the 2nd district here. As you may know, one electoral vote from the state did go to Joe Biden. Did anybody not know that? So with that said, the time to act on these issues and every other issue is right now. Slide, please. Samuel Adams is my favorite historical figure in America. Because a lot of times you feel outnumbered. But Samuel Adams didn't believe that you needed a majority to prevail, but rather an irate minority intent on setting brush fires of freedom in the hearts and minds of men. He also said this quote, which is on the screen, and it's a quote that I live by. And he said this: if you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you. You know the chains that are going to give you $600 a month to shut down the family-owned business you've had for 100 years? And may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. So all the people that come in the future, if we do nothing about our issues today, may they regret that all of you were their countrymen. To me, it means you need to use your God-given skills and your passions to impact change. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into 2020. Easy state, right? Easy conservative state. One of the most reliable in the country. Slide. Who here has been polled in a presidential election in the last 2 cycles? Anybody? Polling. I see one hand. Anybody else take a poll in 2016 or 20? Usually less than 5% of a room is going to say they've been polled for a presidential race in the last 8 years. There are 2 fundamental problems with polling. Number one is polling is used as a suppression tool. Right now it's used to suppress the votes of populist conservative candidates, like Bob. Okay, but it could be used in the future against the Democrats, because the Democrats are eventually going to succeed in overthrowing their party. Just like the right overthrew the Republican Party with the Trump revolution, the left will do the same with the Bernie Sanders revolution. What is true, what is actually true, is what I'm going to show you today. The second reason we have polling is to justify final election outcomes. So there's no better way to sell 40% of the country that Joe Biden should carry Pennsylvania than to have polls showing 9 and 10-point margins for Biden all summer long. So then when it's 1 point, you just have the media saying Trump closed the gap like he did last time. We had him winning all along. So nothing to see here. So polling is part of an information operation to get you to think different than what is real. What is real in election forecasting are trends, indicators, bellwethers, and predictors. Some of mine go back all the way to 1872. Was anybody alive in 1872? Some of your mail voting neighbors were. And we're going to get into those. But here's your trend lines in Nebraska since 2004. You can see a massive Bush victory in Nebraska in 04, about 30 points in margin. Bush over Kerry, the red line Republican, blue line Democrat. So what happened from 04 to 08? We had Bush's second term. Who here would align themselves with an America First agenda? Anybody here America First type? Are there any rhinos in the house? There probably are some rhinos here. It's the Capitol. It's okay. But look, if you're an America First conservative, you have to acknowledge one thing. You need to go home tonight, look yourself in the mirror, and admit that George W. Bush was one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States. Now, why do I say that? The veterans in the House already know this, especially those of you who are Vietnam-era veterans. There were 2 wars that started under Bush. There were no objectives for actually winning those wars. I found that out when I was 26 working a night shift, realizing that counterinsurgencies are never successful unless they're on islands. And here I am in a place the size of Texas. You had the birth and development of a surveillance state in your pocket and on your shelf, the signing of the Patriot Act. You have the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, which will call anybody here listening to this presentation a terrorist. You have the TSA. When you go fly somewhere, you get to enjoy that. You had a president that was a human punching bag. You had a financial collapse and a housing collapse. And he crawled out of on his hands and knees out of the White House with a 25% approval rating, damaging the Republican Party more than it had to be. Then you had the emergence of a very charismatic Democrat, first of his type, who commanded the unions, who got the soft moderates, and who picked up 100% of the minority vote with a record turnout. And you're going to get the trends nationally that swing the election by over 10 points. And here in Nebraska, you turn Nebraska into just a 15-point state in favor of John McCain. So what happens to McCain is McCain loses 60,000 votes in Nebraska in 2008 off of Bush's total. And Obama gains more than 60,000 votes over John Kerry. So the state has a swinging margin of over 100,000 votes favoring Obama. It was enough for him to carry the second district. You know, Nebraska is one of just 2 states that splits its electoral votes. The other one is, which state is that? The other state? Maine. So Obama flipped the second district and trended the state 15 points more Democratic. And then what happens? Obama is one of the weakest incumbent presidents in the history of the country. And had the Republican Party nominated a candidate who could work with the non-college vote, they probably would have flipped Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin in 2012. They were not able to pick up Romney, the spineless jellyfish that he is. He was able to flip the second district in Nebraska back, and he flipped back Indiana and North Carolina, but he couldn't flip much else. That took Donald Trump in 2016 to do, but you see in 2012, Romney gains back 22,000 votes that McCain had lost. Romney's up 22,000, so he's still not really a hit here in the heartland. But you can see there that Obama is down. Obama's down 30,000. So the state trends back Republican in favor of Romney. Now in 2016, Trump gains almost the same amount of votes that Romney did. Trump gains 21,000 votes over Romney, which I would say probably is reflective of population gain alone. And then you can see Clinton as well. Clinton is down 20,000 votes. So the Democrats have gone down 50,000 votes since Obama's high point as the state grows in population. The Republican Party is still not even up to where Bush was in 2004. That was common also in Oklahoma and in Kansas. Romney and Trump lagged McCain and Bush. So if I'm a Trump forecaster in the state, I would look for another gain of 20,000 votes for Trump. Slide. Instead, what we get is a gain of 60,000. So Trump is actually very popular in the state, regardless of what the local papers here in Lincoln or in Omaha might actually tell you. Trump has a record Republican vote gain in the high turnout era of 60,000. What has the Democrat trend line been doing 2 consecutive elections? Which direction have the Dems gone 2 elections in a row? As the Republicans have barely grown. So now the Republicans have a record gain. The Democrats are certainly going to continue this downward spiral, I would expect, would you not? Slide. All right, so how about a gain of 90,000 for Joe Biden from the losing column? So your state had 150,000 new two-party votes, and 90,000 of them went to Joe Biden, 60%. Concerned at all yet? Slide. This county map is called a chloropeth. The chloropeth is a map that uses color to represent statistical information. If it's in green, Bob or any other person holding an office really has no political capital to talk about election audits in a county that's colored in green. It's not going to fly from a statistical perspective. In yellow, like in this county, you absolutely have a case, but in red, like Sarpy County is indicated, red is absolutely mission critical, and you're going to understand when I go through the data. Anybody want to look at some of the counties? All right, slide. Anybody from Sarpy County?
Yep.
Sarpy County is part of the 2nd Congressional District. It's Sarpy County and most of Douglas County that makes up the 2nd Congressional District, which is worth 1 electoral vote. It's typically a Republican vote. Obama won it in 08, but Romney pulled it back, and Trump still won it in 2016. In 2004, the reason I start my numbers in 04 is because 2000 was a low turnout election nationally. And then in 04, both parties gained about 10 million votes and brought us to a constant turnout level that we see up until the 2020 election. So in 2004, we have a Bush win of 23,000 votes in margin. Now, unfortunately for us, the slides are cut off a little bit on the left. We have registration information on the left, but don't worry about it now. 23,000 vote win for Bush. So just like I showed you on the first slide, the state is going to trend to the left for Obama a lot. So Obama made major inroads in Nebraska in 2008, and you'll see it in Sarpy County. Slide. And you can see that McCain is down over 1,000 votes, and Obama is up almost 11,000. Now notice, Obama's gain is strong enough to depress the Republican column, even in a Republican stronghold. So now it's only an 11,000 vote Republican win. The numbers on the right are how many new registrations came in between 04 and 08. You can see 3,000 new Republican, 500 new Democrat, a total of almost 8,000 net new registered voters. So the county trends to the left. So now Obama, in his first term, Obama's one of the weakest incumbent presidents in the history of the country. So you can expect this county to move back off to the right. Slide. And what you see is a gain of over 4,000 votes for Romney. And the Democrats are down about 1,400 votes. So now the trend is going back Republican, and that was predictable based on the registration numbers you see on the right. A 2-to-1 Republican registration edge that makes the county more Republican as a whole. So now we have 2012. Just as the statewide trend showed, the county moves back towards the GOP. So for Trump's first run, Trump shook up the Republican Party. So it's possible that he's going to lose his grip on some of the suburban moderates in Douglas County, but he's going to maximize the turnout of conservatives in the rural parts of the state. Slide. So Trump 2016, he only gains 2,000 votes. I would consider that to be commensurate with population gain in Sarpy County, not necessarily a surge. Clinton is almost at the same number Obama was 8 years before, so that's not a Democrat surge either. You can see the Democrats here have pretty much been stuck for 3 consecutive cycles. The Republicans, once again, are 2-to-1 over the Democrats in registration. So if I'm a Trump strategist in 2020, we have a gain of 2,000 in the last election. If we have another gain of 2,000, that's going to put him at about 47,000 votes. So I would consider it somewhere in the high 40s to be my target range of turnout for Trump votes. Let's say 47,000 for Trump. Slide. How about 52,000? So that is a record Republican turnout of 7,000 new votes for a candidate you were told was unpopular in the suburbs. 7,000. The Democrats have been stuck 3 elections in a row. Clinton gained about 1,400 votes. We can go ahead and say that Biden, best case scenario, Biden's going to come in about 30,000 with a gain. I would consider a gain to be unlikely with the size of the Trump gain. But what do you say, 30,000? 30,000? Slide. 41,000. This is 11,000 higher than the most optimistic forecast in Sarpy County. District 2, of course, was an electoral vote that was lost. You want to see Douglas County? Slide. This is a Bush County. This is a 37,000 vote margin in 04. And then you're going to see the Obama surge really take effect in Douglas County. Slide. There's a Republican loss of 15,000, a Democrat gain of 33,000. So a massive gain for one party coming at the expense of the other. And you can see there with the registration numbers, the Republican Party takes a beating, loses 10,000 registrations from the rolls. Frustration with the Bush turn. Slide. Now you're going to see Romney flip the county back. And it's not because he surged. Romney's not even up to the Bush level of votes. It's because Obama collapsed by over 10,000 votes. So the county became Republican once again, not because of Romney, but because of Obama's collapse, losing the working class voter. Trump 2016, slide. This is a loss of 5,000 for Trump. This is the suburban moderate leaving the Trump column, voting third party. And then you have the Democrats with a very modest gain as well, 7,000 votes. So the Democrats have flickered out in Douglas County as well since 2008. So Trump narrowly loses Douglas County. Any Republican strategist would be happy if Trump simply just turned back the losses. Try to get over 110,000 would be a good goal. Slide. And we have Trump at 119. Trump's at 119,000 in 2020. So very possible that he can run even in Douglas County with recent trends or narrowly lose. I would say that it's possible that with recent gains that Biden could be around 120. Slide. 150. So we're 30,000 over what I would consider to be a reasonable forecast in Douglas County as well. So that's 30,000 in Douglas. Then we have 10,000 in Sarpy. So put all that together and think about the second district. Slide. Because here's the second district trend lines going through 2016. It was a Republican blowout for Bush in 04. Bush, of course, won Douglas County and he won Sarpy County big time. And then you're going to see the switch in 08. The switch is very big. Now, of course, the Republican column is down substantially for McCain in 08, but the Democrat column is up about 40,000 votes for Obama. So Obama flipped the second district in 08, and then the losses for the Democrats began in 2012. So Obama in his re-election lost nearly 20,000 votes in the second district. Romney was not actually very popular. Romney has a very narrow gain of only about 5,000 votes. The district flipped it back. Trump is below Romney. Trump loses votes from Romney, but Clinton can't close the gap. So Trump wins the district by 6,000. I think the Republican Party is on the wrong trend. Slide. Until we get that kind of a gain for Trump in 2020. So Trump once again reverses all the declines of the party in a Republican district. The Democrat line, modest gains or losses. Slide. Until that. And there's your 44,000 new Biden votes showing up in the second district with one electoral vote at stake. Did anybody think about this on election night? The one vote from the second district, perhaps in a close race, being extremely critical? Slide. Lancaster County. How many of you are from here? Republican stronghold in 2004 is a 17,000 vote win. And then you're going to see the flip. Slide. This is your Obama flip. 13,000 new votes for Obama in a college county. A loss of over 10,000 for the Republicans, and that was predictable based on the registration information you see on the right. Now it's going to flip back in 2012. Slide. But is it because of Romney or is it because of Obama? It's because of Obama collapsing and losing votes. Obama loses almost 4,000 votes. Romney, very modest gains here. Slide. And now you're going to see Trump. Trump is lower than Romney. Clinton is lower than Obama. So it's really a race to the bottom in the county in 2016, narrowly won by Clinton by a couple hundred votes. The Republicans are stuck. It would be nice for Trump to reverse the decline seen in 2016. I would say anything above 62 or 63,000 would probably minimize damage. Slide. 63,000? How about 70,000? So there's your gain of 8,500 votes, which is a Republican record in a fairly moderate county. The Democrats have been on a downward swing since 2008, losing votes every election. I would say that that trend line for the Democrats is right around 60,000 votes, with a clear Trump win in the county. 60,000 for Biden. Slide. 82,000. So now we have a blowout in the county. I would say that's 15 to 20,000 higher than any optimistic forecast. Slide. All right, so I've shown you the issues. What do we do about the issues is the question. Now, we can complain all day long. I just showed you 3 counties. I showed you the trends for the district, and I showed you the trends for the state over a 16-year cycle. And I was asked, where's Amber? Is Amber around here? So Amber over there said that we need to have solutions, and she's 100% correct. Because people are always upset. They don't feel like there's enough solutions. Now we have obstacles that prevent these solutions from being put into place. But the baton absolutely has to be passed from me to you in order to get anything done. And these are 10 points. Anybody that's running for office, now obviously you've already had your primaries. Bob was somebody who was 100% on board with the 10 points for true election integrity. If we were to put these into play, 100% we would dry up the avenues for widespread election fraud in any state or county. Because we have to have a goal. I understand that this establishment right here was one of very few in Lincoln to defy mandates that are unconstitutional. So that's a round of applause right there. That was in response to a so-called pandemic. Now, I will tell you, there is a true pandemic in this country. You guys know what it's called? Slide. Electile dysfunction. And the reason I'm here is to talk about ending electile dysfunction. Now, we also have people that are derelict in their duties in dealing with this. I'm going to show you on the first slide. But the goal of the 10 points is to end that dysfunction, and it must happen. Okay, they will corrupt every single urban area or suburban area in this state if you don't exercise what needs to be done. Slide. The first thing that has to happen, point number 1, is to clean out the voter rolls. Slide. Now, you guys need to go up to the screen and take photos because this is very small, very detailed slide. Where is Conan? Is Conan in here?
Right here. Right here. Right here. Right here.
All right, so this fellow right here is an Army veteran named Conan Thomas, and he's running as the Libertarian candidate for sheriff in the county. We talked about these issues before I came up here. And I will tell you, with very few exceptions, the sheriff of Racine County in Wisconsin, the sheriff of Berry County, Michigan, are a couple of exceptions, but most sheriffs are derelict in their duties to clean these issues up. Wisconsin has 72 counties, and I'm going to show you some damage from just a couple of them. And by the way, Conan's all about using law enforcement to clean up issues like election fraud. This slide here, the top left, that apartment on the top left. Now I know that some of you probably come from big families, and that's good. But that apartment complex on the top left, that building has 20 units, but 312 registered voters, which is 16 registered voters per unit. To me, it sounds a little bit excessive. Now, big families are a thing, but I don't know about 16 registered voters per unit. That is in Dane County, Wisconsin, which is the home county of Madison. Madison, of course, is key to the Democrats being able to win Wisconsin, that in Milwaukee County. You can see there on the bottom left, that particular complex has 23 registered voters per unit. The one to the right of the top left one is an assisted living center, which has twice as many registered voters as they have beds. So take these corrupt voter rolls and then multiply that by a state that has mass mail-in balloting, followed by mules. 7% of ballots mailed out in Wisconsin were believed to have been trafficked by mules that you see on 2,000 mules and deposited in drop boxes. Wisconsin was decided by 20,600 votes. Look at what happened, multiply that times 72 counties, and you have the answer to your equation. So cleaning out the voter rolls is the first step. We can talk about machines until we're blue in the face. We can talk about ballot harvesters until we're blue in the face, but as long as there exists what Dr. Frank calls a credit line of fraudulent registrations to send mail ballots to or to electronically turn out, then we will always have the chronic electoral dysfunction that plagues our system. Cleaning out the voter rolls is basically keeping your glove on the ground in order to catch a ground ball. It's the fundamental step towards cleaning up our elections is cleaning out the rolls. Anybody involved in canvassing? A bunch of you. Canvassing is how you find the parking lots that are voting. It's how you find twice as many registered voters as there are beds in a nursing home. And it's how you find 16 registered voters per unit in an apartment complex. This is not kooky conspiracy theory, it's reality. Corrupt voter rolls are the foundation of fraudulent elections. Good voter rolls are the foundation of good elections. So are we clear? The first step is to clean out voter rolls. You guys can push this in whatever county you're from. I don't care if you're from the most liberal county in the Midwest or in the heartland. You can go into Douglas County with your parking lots voting for president. That is a crime. That is called election fraud. Okay, you need to push it. You need to push it to the clerks and the law enforcement. If they don't want to budge on it, you're going to have my email address too, and I will make a public issue out of it. So we will pressure people into doing the right thing and cleaning up crime. Election fraud is a crime. Slide. Number 2, ban all electronic elections equipment. Now, when I mean all electronic equipment, I'm talking about ballot marking devices, scanners, tabulators, and electronic poll books. I spoke with a fellow veteran beforehand who is in IT for a living, and he interviewed somebody who had a profile working for ES&S, voting machine company, talking about the internal chips and modems that are able to connect these machines to the internet during elections. Now, here's the issues with machines. It's a matter of trust. 52 to 59% of Americans, depending on what source you read, don't trust the system of elections or outright believe them to be fraudulent. We have multiple studies that are done on electronics, and it doesn't matter what vendor, so don't get stuck on one particular vendor. We have Antrim County, Michigan. You can look up the work of Matt DePerno's team on Antrim County, which was on election night. The county clerk was forced to take the fall over that. Then we have the work in Mesa County, Colorado, by the Lindell team, championed by Jeff O'Donnell, who's the lone raccoon on Telegram. You have a recent audit in Otero County in New Mexico, which has revealed that machines can tap into registration databases electronically and turn out voters remotely without them ever showing up. So we're down 2,000 votes, but here's 2,500 new voters to come out. No paper, no trail. If you really want the smoking gun on the electronic equipment, look at Maricopa County. Maricopa County's Board of Supervisors, by the way, 4 out of 5 seats are held by Republicans, which means that both parties feed at the same trough that I'm talking about tonight. They refuse to comply with subpoena from the Arizona Senate to turn over logs, routers, and other electronic equipment. So what would happen if you defied a subpoena? What would happen if you defied a subpoena? You would go to jail. Okay, the Maricopa County Board did not. So why are they not turning over the equipment that would completely acquit them of any wrongdoing in the 2020 election? So the answer to this is we need to ban electronic equipment and move to hand-counted paper ballots with anti-counterfeit measures. Slide. Number 3, voter ID with paper ballots only. It is my understanding that a number of conservative states, so there's a number of conservative states that do have voter ID on the book, like Texas has voter ID, but it's very loosely enforced in certain areas, in certain counties. So my 85% Republican county is going to look at my ID up and down in every light they have. You go down to Houston, they're not going to look at it at all. In North Carolina, they don't have voter ID. Where are you guys at on voter ID here? You don't have it. Okay? So with voter ID, let me tell you this. There is no argument or excuse that justifies not having ID to vote. Okay? Anybody who wants to withhold identification from an election intends to defraud their elections. Hey, this is how it gets in the South, is people make it a matter of race suppression. You're trying to suppress the vote, but I'll tell you this, Donald Trump had it right when he would put out those mean tweets, even though a lot of people clutched their pearls. What he was doing was he was ridiculing his opponents. Because Alinsky's rules for radicals lays out the fifth point being ridicule. The left, of course, weaponizes all those rules against conservatives or patriots. Trump did the same to them, and they didn't know how to respond to it. So the way you roll out the rules for radicals on voter ID is you simply say, look, there's nothing more racist in the world than insinuating an entire people group based on the color of their skin or their race is too dumb to get an ID. Number 4, ban mail-in voting. Why do we have an asterisk there? Well, it's because I'm hard, but I'm fair. Veterans, or not veterans, military service members overseas, or legitimately disabled voters with a notary, fine. We can make a system in which you can vote by mail. Other than that, our elections are not about convenience. They never were about convenience. They're designed to protect the sanctity of your vote. Slide. Because mail-in ballots can go anywhere, including there. And they're chased down by ballot harvesters and mules that are being paid to defraud people's votes and drop ballots in drop boxes. So if we can go to the gym, if we can go to the driving range, if we can get our hair done, if we can go watch the Huskers play, if we can go on an airplane, then sure enough, once every other year or twice every other year for a primary, we can get out and vote in person. Now, there are things that we have to do to make that something that's a palatable solution for everyone, but banning mail-in voting is very fundamental towards saving our elections. Slide. Number 5, ban early voting with an asterisk. A number of states like Minnesota and Virginia, they have 45 days of early voting. People are voting in September, not even time for an October surprise. I have an asterisk, so doctors, nurses, pilots, people who can't turn out on election day. And by the way, I was under the impression that we have a constitutionally established election day. So why don't we get back to that? Not election weeks or election month. And let me show you a really good reason why we have election day. Slide. Because in Texas, you can actually blame Texas, for early voting. Texas began putting early voting laws on the books in 1917. And then by 1987, you could turn out and vote early for no reason at all. So when Governor Abbott gave a third week of early voting, and early voting in Texas is somewhat of a religion, 91% of the vote was in before Election Day in 2020. 91%. And do you think that they're not using machines to tabulate the votes and know what the score is going into Election Day? This is drive-through voting in Houston. So the governor of Texas gave an extra week of early voting. The Democrats responded by organizing drive-through voting lanes in the largest population centers. It's too dangerous to get out and vote, so here's 10 IDs. Please give me 10 ballots. San Antonio, Houston, Rio Grande Valley, every major metro. Early voting defies the Constitution's intent to protect the vote and make it a one-day thing. Slide. Number 6, drastically smaller precincts. Now, I'm going to guess, based on the hands that went up for who's been canvassing, that we have pretty good involvement. A number of you seem to be very well plugged into the election movement here in the state. Who here is a precinct committeeman? Got a couple of them, because you'll probably confirm this. You're probably big time short on other precinct committee leaders, poll workers, other election workers, correct? Because in most states I go to, in Texas there's a crisis. There's not enough people to help run any of these precincts. Slide. This is Maricopa County in Arizona. There are 748 precincts that voted in 2020. A number of these had over 7,000 votes cast for president. With the turnout figures being reported in the 70s, you're looking at 9,000 to 10,000 registered voters per precinct in precincts that cast that many votes. Precinct leaders are not able to QA/QC those voter rolls. and monitor them for people that have moved out, died, moved within the precinct. They're not able to oversee several weeks of elections activities, and they're definitely not able, with any sort of reasonable time frame, to canvass or look at the quality of the reported results coming out. I have an estimate of 250,000 imaginary Biden votes in Maricopa County. A number of those precincts have 200 to 300 each. We have to have smaller precincts. The recommendation from Liz Harris in Maricopa County was 1,200 or fewer voters. What that means is, if we're to be successful in implementing these reforms, we're going to have, in some places, 5 or 6 times more of a need for people to be involved at the precinct level. So what this means is, if you want elections to be fixed, you're going to have to raise your hands and jump in at the precinct level. It's not glamorous. It's not a lot of fun, but it's an essential thing. Because if we're going to be successful in implementing the remaining points, especially number 8, we have to fix the precinct level issues. PrecinctStrategy.com is also a very good place to start looking at the precinct stuff. Slide. Number 7, ban ballot harvesting. It has to come with some serious teeth. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, made ballot harvesting a felony recently. Ballot harvesting is the secret sauce for amping up mail ballot turnout, especially for candidates who don't leave their basement, but somehow flip an electoral vote in the heartland of the country. Slide. So ballot harvesting, you want to turn a ballot in for your spouse? I think that's the heart behind the idea, but California perfected ballot harvesting. Somehow has lost all of its residents to red states and managed to turn those red states purple and purple states blue, and also double its own Democrat vote totals in 20 years. Does that make any sense to anybody? The ballot harvesting has to be met with substantial penalties, just like we see with Governor DeSantis, because it is the spine of what you see in 2,000 Mules, and you all need to go watch that film. Slide. Number 8, Election Day is a holiday. Critical, very critical point, and it's not what I would call a conservative textbook point, because there's a lot of people like Ben Shapiro that would beat their chest and say it's not conservative. Well, building a wall is not conservative either. It takes a lot of government money and people to do, but it's a necessary thing. So, Election Day is a holiday. It's going to be very hard for the grassroots left, your counterparts on the left, to oppose this idea, which will basically leave the political class saying, we don't need this as a holiday. But how many of you have been to the post office and you need to ship a package out, and you pull on the door and the door won't open? And then you look at your phone and you find out, well, hey, it's Bill Smith Day. Well, look, nothing against Bill Smith, but who the hell is Bill Smith and why does he have his own holiday? So we have to have Election Day as a holiday. We need to protect our constitutionally established Election Day. And it has to come with restricting mail ballots, restricting early voting. That way, you will clean up all avenues for 3 and 4 weeks to rig elections out. So the candidates that are smart are going to start running with that, and those of you who have the resources, we've had a number of successful billboard campaigns in the last year that I've heard of, especially in the field of election integrity. Go ahead and put some of that out in Douglas County or here in Lancaster County. Put it on the airwaves and see if you get positive reception for that, because this is the future of clean elections, is Election Day is a protected holiday. But it comes with restrictions on all the shortcuts, tricks, and procedures that are used to defraud your vote. Slide. Slide again. Number 9, new reporting requirements for transparency. This is the kind of stuff that Bob would talk about because it's named after a really slimy guy. Slide. I call it the Raffensperger rules. This is the feckless, useless Georgia Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. His claim to fame was presiding over a fraudulent election in Georgia in 2020, and then 2 months later, presiding over a fraudulent Senate runoff in which David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler lost their seats, and then recording President Trump complaining about said fraudulent election in Georgia. Not so much a problem here, but if you look around, so look at your cousins to the east, not quite your neighbors, but look at Illinois. I did a study yesterday on my Substack. Cook County produces a margin of almost 1.2 million Democrat votes. There is no combination of Republican counties that can make up a margin of 1.2 million votes. So if you look at, is anybody here originally from the actual Midwest? I hate it when people call Nebraska the Midwest, by the way. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Anybody from there? Pennsylvania has 67 counties. And so many times, 66 counties will come in and it looks really good for the conservative ticket. And then after 3 days, here comes Philadelphia County, and the entire ticket loses. The same can be said for Wayne County, Michigan, Milwaukee County in Wisconsin. It's getting to be Atlanta, Fulton County in Georgia, Maricopa County, Arizona. It's already Seattle, King County, Portland, Multnomah County, Oregon. And soon, unfortunately, it's going to be Dallas County in Texas, holding on to their votes. What we're going to have happen is all mail-in ballots, the very few that we allow, they're going to be back by 5 o'clock the day before the election, and they'll be counted first. So no more of this crap where you come apply for a mail ballot at 5 p.m. the day before an election, like you could do in Alaska, and then have a week to turn it in. And then we're going to count those ballots first, and then as the polls close, we're going to have an actual count at the precinct level, how many ballots will be counted, and that number will be binding. And then we're going to have an established deadline to count those beautiful paper ballots by hand in our wonderful small precincts. And we can have results that we can trust. This is something that absolutely has to happen, because if the roles were reversed and 66 counties in PA would report their votes after Philly reported, you'd have a crisis. They'd even call it, like this stupid committee going on right now in Congress, they'd even call it a constitutional crisis. Slide. And the last one you'll like, heavy prison sentences for all who commit fraud. And that is my very generous step number 10. I have a less generous one. Slide. All right, so where are we going with all this? Slide. In conclusion, what did I just get done telling you? So sometimes I get the question, is everybody moving on from 2020, willing to accept 2020? The answer is no. I'm never going to accept 2020 as a legitimate election. It's just not going to happen. Okay, and it's not because I have an agenda. It's because I've already been proven right time and time again. Every audit that's done, every single shred of information, especially the Mules documentary, it proves all of this to be right and even lenient. 2020 is the precedent for all future elections. If we don't learn the lessons and remedy the problems of 2020, regardless of what may happen in any courtroom about 2020, then we're never going to fix the system of elections. It's all a bunch of screaming out in the wind, Amber. You got me, Amber? Right? So the solutions are the most important, right? 100%. Because we already have elections. We've had primaries. Okay, we've had plenty of primaries like you see on point number 2. Texas primaries. Georgia. Anybody paying attention to the Georgia primary? Brian Kemp gets 74% of the vote without a Trump endorsement, with twice as many ballots cast for Georgia governor as 4 years ago. Beating Trump's endorsed pick by 50 points. I don't know President Trump to be willing to back a horse that will lose by 50 points, but what do I know? And then there's Candace Taylor, who had 60,000 volunteers in the state, but 41,000 votes. So she only got the support of 2/3 of the volunteers, apparently. That's a problem affecting both parties. We have Democrats complaining that they voted, the candidate and her husband voted in their precinct, and the precinct reported no votes for them. And so what is going on with the system of elections? These are issues that even if you don't agree with the foundation of what you hear, you have to understand that 60% of the country doesn't trust the system of elections. That in itself is a crisis. It's not a Republican problem. It's not a Democrat problem. It's an everyone. It's an American problem. Okay, the constitutional republic cannot stand without people trusting the system of electing its leaders. And the final point, the first half of my presentation was my complaint section. These are your counties. These are your statewide trends. This is what I believe to be an election that does not accurately reflect the views and the political will of the voters of the state of Nebraska. And shame on any officials who won't listen to you bringing these claims. We have to be the people. We have to be the people that bring solutions. That's why I'm telling you, Election Day is a holiday. People are tired of the same old ideas. Don't sit there and scream about election integrity without some teeth in your plan. We have to have ways for people to understand this stuff. And if you're not involved yet, if you were just dragged in here and you don't give a hoot in hell about election integrity, I'm assuming you care about something. You may be in the pro-life movement. You may be a Second Amendment advocate. You may be pushing back on critical race theory. You might be, and you certainly should be, standing up for medical freedom. Okay, the owners of this establishment absolutely did it. Okay, and that's one speck of light out there in a sea of darkness. We have to be willing to stand up and be the people that promote freedom. So if you're not doing anything right now, so I get it all the time. People come up and say, I want to get plugged in, but I don't know where to start. Whatever it is that you do well, combine it with whatever it is that you care about, and you're going to find yourself on a path getting plugged in with like-minded folks solving problems. Because it doesn't take the majority to prevail. It took 3% of the colonists to start their own path towards making this the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. So I implore everybody here to start pushing these 10 points out, make them known, put them on the airwaves, plaster them everywhere. I get people that put me on Truth Social and they're saying, we presented these ideas in front of these folks all over the place. So I'm passing you the baton. And I'm not from here. I don't have the relationships here that you have. But all of you need to understand, there's nowhere else to run to. Okay, our hope is not necessarily in elections. This is just one issue of the lost liberty that we've had in the country. So I want to thank you all for your time and your energy. And I want to encourage everybody to get busy moving. So Bob, thanks so much for having me. Elliot, I'm going to pass the mic on to you. You said you wanted to sing a song, right?
Yeah.
Living the